my B-Portfolio presentation via video because I cannot be there with you this lovely Saturday morning. I'm going to be showcasing my 5 artifacts in my B-Portfolio today. The first ones I'm going to be talking about is my research paper rubric and peer edit sheet that goes along with that. Then I'll be talking about a scoring sheet I use in AP Language and Composition. I'll be going over an entry slip that students have to fill out as they enter artifacts into their own portfolios. I'll be going over a rhetorical device quiz that I give my AP Language and Composition class. And finally, I'll be going over my Macbeth Project rubric and how I've changed that from what I used to do based on my new knowledge of assessment. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is the research paper peer review and rubric. Research paper peer review and rubric. The peer review is the assessment for learning piece. What I did is I took the language of the rubric, which the students usually find confusing, and I turned that into a really simple yes or no format that they could use to edit each other's research papers. So that way they were familiar with the standards. The standards were put in student-friendly language, and they actually had some experience using the standards to score each other's work. And it's for learning because the students were then going to take that input from that sheet and use that to make revisions to their own papers. So the kids do that. They have the assessment for learning. Hopefully they learn something based on their peer editor's advice. And then the assessment of learning is the research paper rubric, which clearly shows how each category is weighted, the importance of each category. You can see up at the top that the formatting and requirements have some different point values than some of the other categories down below, and that the bibliography piece is worth significantly more points. And those reflect the amount of time that was spent in class going over those things. So this is the final assignment for 10th grade English. So this rubric is more of an assessment of learning because the students won't have an opportunity to go back and improve this piece as it's the last thing that they do, and it's designed to kind of utilize all the skills that they've been learning over the course of the semester. The second thing I'm going to show you is a different type of score sheet. I use this with my AP Language and Composition class, which is mostly 11th and 12th grade students. It's not in rubric form, which was kind of weird to me at first. It's actually a format that I got at an AP workshop, and it's worked out really well. It's modeled after the qualities of high quality, mid quality, and low quality essays on the AP test. And some of the language mirrors what's on the AP rubrics. So what I do when I score it, I highlight exactly where the student's strengths were, where they fell on the rubric. So you can see this particular student did fairly well the first time around. But the good thing about this type of rubric is when I gave the opportunity to revise, students can see exactly where they need to revise, do it, and then I score it again using the same rubric only in a different color, and they can see where they improved. As you can see with the blue ink down there, you can see where she improved from her first score. So this gives students not only an assessment of their learning, but I also provide 3 suggestions, as you can see on the bottom. No matter what their grades were, they always got 3 suggestions for improvement, and hopefully they can then take those and use those and resubmit it as the student did. And then I also give some narrative commentary, and most of that narrative commentary is positive, so telling them some good things that they did, things they did real well, because I want students to look first at what's highlighted on the score sheet, second at the suggestions where they can do next time to improve, third at the comments, and then last the actual grade that they got. So they actually have feedback in 3 different places, more narrative that's not just the grade. The third thing I'm going to talk about is back to my sophomore classes. They have to compile a portfolio that is the final for the class, and all large assignments go into this portfolio. I hand back essays, and they don't just get to take them and throw them away. They actually have to think about what their score is and why they got that score and what they did well and so on. And in order to do that, I have this entry to fill out. And so this is more of a self-reflection kind of thing, a self-assessment. They reflect on how well they achieved the learning target, how close they got. In fact, they have to articulate what the learning target was, what the purpose of the assignment was, which I go over throughout the unit, but they have to tell me what they thought the purpose was. They have to tell me what abilities and skills were demonstrated, proud of, and then if the grade they received accurately reflects their knowledge. So this is greatly helpful in the future because they know maybe things that they're proud of, but they also know some things they need to work on too. A change that I've made this year, I used to only have students who actually turn something in, fill out one of these entry slips. But this year I started giving the entry slips to everybody, even if they didn't turn in the assignment, and they had to answer the questions for as far as they got, and except for the last one, because they didn't get a grade, they tell me how far they got on the project and what they need to do differently the next time so that they'll be able to turn in the project on time. So I felt that has been a real positive thing, and it actually gets kids, even if they didn't turn in the assignment, to think back and see school as a process of learning and improvement instead of, well, I didn't turn it in, I didn't get a grade, I don't care. All right, the fourth example I have is more of a selected response assessment. It's a rhetorical device quiz I give in my AP class, and I don't give too many of selected response assessments. Usually it's just vocabulary quizzes and some very basic comprehension quizzes, that kind of thing. Generally doing more extended response in English class. But this is an example of a selected response assessment, which is why I wanted to include it. I also want to include it because I feel it mirrors what the students are expected to do during class through their daily assignments. So it's 3 parts to the quiz. The first part is basically matching the term to the definition. So as the students, maybe I should back up, as the students go through the semester, each week they're required to do 2 rhetorical device entries. They have to tell me what the term means, so the definition. They have to give me an example of the term from the stuff that we've studied in class, and then they have to provide an explanation of how that term functions in argument as a whole. So the quiz mirrors that. The first part, like I said, is matching, so they have to know the term and the definition. The second part is giving examples of each of the terms from material we've studied in class. And the third part, it's not included on the slide because when I make copies of it, I actually cut out something from one of the AP tests and tape it on there. But the third part, they have to read a passage from a past AP test, pick out 3 rhetorical devices, and explain briefly how they function in argument. So they're being quizzed on exactly the same things that they're required to do for each of the rhetorical device entries. It's just all at once. So I felt that this was a really good example of how assessment can match what's going on in the classroom. It's not something completely different. It's not something that the kids haven't seen before. And that's why I chose this particular piece for an example of selected response. The fifth one, which is my Macbeth Project rubric, I chose for 2 different reasons. One is that it's a performance assessment, unlike the other ones that I've gone over. But the second thing is it demonstrates how something I've learned through my study of assessment practices. And that thing is making the assessment match what you want it to do. So I want to give you some background on this. I wanted to give my students something creative to do. You know, Macbeth, Shakespeare, it can be kind of difficult, and I wanted to have them do something creative at the end. So there's 2 summative assessments. One's an in-class essay, and the other one is a project. And I wanted the project to allow them to use their different learning styles to create this project and demonstrate their learning their own way. But then, how I had the project structured was almost working against my vision for it. What I did is I gave them options on the project. They could choose option 1, 2, 3. If they wanted to work individually, they chose one of the individual options. If they wanted to work in a group, they chose a group option. And I felt that that was still too limiting. And I had to have different rubrics for each one, and I tried to make the rubrics all have the same stuff on it. It was very difficult. And so what I ended up doing was changing the project into its current incarnation, which is removing the options and giving the students instead a list of standards on the rubric and saying, hey, you can do whatever you want to as long as it's presented in front of the class and it meets these standards. And it really opened it up to them. And I really liked the results. I had very creative projects. I had kids writing children's books. I had kids writing raps. I had kids performing scenes in front of the class. I had puppet shows. And they were very different, and the kids were into it because they got to choose, and there was really no restrictions. But they were still held to a standard, and everyone was held to the same standard, regardless of what project they chose. So that's why I included this particular piece. If you want to see more of give more explanations, I guess, for any of these artifacts, you can check them out. I have them on my B portfolio, so if you're ever bored and need some reading material, you can go ahead and peruse that. Also, any questions, feel free, since I'm not there to answer them, you can email me, post any comments on my B portfolio. I'll be checking that out. And I really do, welcome any kind of questions or comments or anything that you guys have to give. So hopefully you've enjoyed this video presentation and enjoy the rest of your Saturday. And I will be seeing you guys all hopefully very soon. Thanks.
But peace to the people who don't ever preach up in the front of a classroom all day long, planting seeds of revolution. We dedicate this song.